Hello, we're back with Jordan of StrataPress for best accounting and bookkeeping practices for strata corporations. Welcome back, Sean.
Well, thank you, Thomas, and happy to be here. This isn't my
I've got to
strongest.
say,
Sorry.
yeah, you're not either. Okay, well, here we go. A couple of people that are not especially strong on bookkeeping talking about bookkeeping. I don't know. Should everybody tune into this or what?
I think so. I'll tell you what, I do know bookkeeping the way I do it. I've done many Excel sheets, I've done business plans, I've done projected budgets, all those type of things. I was on a strata for years, and I always looked at the accounting and everything like that. My dad was an accountant by trade, and so it was kind of always just taken care of by somebody else. And
Got it.
I always knew I could find professional help, so I never really got into it as far as like really deep into the programs. Even something as easy as QuickBooks is like, okay, where do I start with this thing? But I know enough to be a little dangerous, but I'm not a professional.
Okay,
And
and while I'm not a good bookkeeper, I will say that I have reviewed more strata budgets than probably anyone in this province. So,
that's it.
yeah, very, very glad to be here on this important topic because it's fundamental to everything that a strata does.
It
So,
is.
before we jump into it, tell us a bit more about StrataPress.
Oh, well, StrataPress is a platform. It's we sell strata documents to realtors, lawyers, and notaries, and we have a strata owners portal, which shares those documents with strata owners, so they can create an account, access documents about their property, and then they can communicate with their strata managers and property managers as well. So that's the platform in a nutshell. We've been at it probably close to 10 years, and it just keeps growing. And now we're adding an accounting feature, accounting and bookkeeping. That's why this topic I thought would be interesting, because we're working on that now, and we're working with volunteer strata council members, getting their feedback on our platform, and it's coming from people who have accounting experience, of course, and so giving
Fantastic.
us feedback on that.
So it is a big topic. Where should we begin?
Well, I think it's one of the most important things about being on council is being responsible for the budget and oversight on spending. So this is more about maybe not best accounting practices, but about building confidence through better strata accounting practices. So, like I said, strong accounting practices for a strata, they're more than just a regulatory requirement. They're a foundation of trust and effective governance. It is required by, you need to keep your books in up to date and in order, so that you have confidence in your communities that they trust with what's going on. So I'd say better accounting means better governance, and better governance leads to stronger, more confident communities.
Absolutely. We know that to be true. And what is this requirement about segregation?
Okay, so segregation, that is the Strata Property Act legally requires two separate funds, one for the operating fund that handles day-to-day expenses such as like maintenance, insurance, and utilities, and you have a contingency reserve fund for long-term repairs and capital replacements. So an operating fund for the Strata Corporation is the money used to pay for common expenses that occur once a year or more frequently, such as like utilities, landscaping, and insurance. And then your contingency reserve fund, usually referred to as the CRF, helps pay for expenses that occur less than once a year, or do not occur at all. These might be like replacing a roof, upgrading the elevator, repaving a road, or even paying for. Now, I think you can use those funds to pay for the depreciation report and the new electrical planning report. So that's kind of
Excellent.
money set aside. So mixing funds can create compliance issues and confusion about what money is available for what purpose. So you got to keep your operating fund and your CRF separate.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Separate banks accounts would be probably the best for those. Not just on the books, but actually have separate bank accounts.
Absolutely.
Monthly reconciliation. This is one of the simplest, most powerful safeguards in bookkeeping to ensure every transaction matches between the bank statements and the accounting records. So you want to compare your bank statements against accounting records each month to confirm accuracy. And then that helps identify or correct errors such as like double entries or missed deposits. So again, the reconciliation on a monthly basis builds confidence in the reports that you're providing to the council and owners. And if you start missing these things or you have a delay in doing reconciliation, that's usually the first sign of weak financial control, and things can spiral from there. So you got to keep on top of this stuff on a monthly basis. So that's what that's all about. It's a good practice.
Great.
Um, Accrual versus cash accounting. This was new to me up until we started doing the accounting program for StrataPress. And the person who's designing the back end, he's designed a couple of different accounting platforms for similar industries, and he always uses accrual versus cash. So cash accounting records transactions only when money changes hands. In other words, revenue is recorded only when cash is actually received, whereas accrual is a method that records revenue when it's earned, meaning when a product or service has been delivered to a customer and there's a reasonable expectation of payment. So that's the one most prefer. That was the one talking with accountants and getting feedback. That's the one they were recommending to go with. Accrual accounting records income and expenses when they're earned and provides a more accurate financial picture. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes, obviously, accrual accounting makes sense to accountants. It doesn't make as much sense to the rest of us, and I'm saying that just as someone who has spent a career in finance. I tend to still think about my life in cash accounting terms because if I don't have the money in my hand, it doesn't count.
right.
Um, but that is accrual is the basis under which all modern accounting is
Yeah.
completed.
Yep.
And I think that obviously that's how your system is being designed, and that's for the best.
Yeah.
Um, can we put this into sort of more concrete terms, Sean? This means that in an accrual method, you would be counting a strata fee when it's supposed to be paid at the beginning of the month, for example, and not when the cash is actually received from a particular owner that's been on vacation and hadn't had direct deposit set up a week later, right?
Yeah, it feels like
Right.
it's more real time. It's now. It's like this is the transaction, the money will be received, but this is the date or this is the time or the month that this money is earned, and it should be recorded in that. Instead
Yeah.
of pushing things down the road to when you actually receive the cash, because you could have 10 late payments and you'd have to have a separate, method to chase that money and record it. Whereas if you're just saying, okay, well, this is when the money's been earned, the payment will come in, and they can line that up through accrual. Accrual.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to make sure that everything is designated under the correct category. So, talk to us a bit about coding.
Yeah. So in our budgeting or in the budgeting in our system, everything would have a code or a category. So these would be things, I can't even think of what those would be necessarily, but your revenue expenses, maybe it's a landscaping expense, maybe it's your workout room, maybe it's the elevator, things that have expense. So you got to categorize that so that you can keep track of these things. So each transaction should be recorded under one of your correct codes or categories. So this just helps keep things from being distorted and not complicated. Misclassified expenses can distort budgets and financial reports if you aren't tracking that stuff properly. So you can use what they call a chart of accounts. You can Google that. I think there's an example in this a little later on here, um, where you can use codes for easy comparison. They're consistent as far as how you categorize stuff. So you might have to train somebody on understanding what those codes are. If you've got volunteers in a self-managed strata, and this is what we're talking about here, self-managed stratas, somebody's going to take over the treasury position and take over the accounting. They should understand what each one of those categories is for. Should be clear. And so that they can continue on and categorize expenses properly. So it all balances out in the end.
We have mention here of both auditors and accountants. Can you tell us anything about when a strata might use one or the other?
An auditor, usually, uh, I guess if you want to take a look at deep dive into your books, you get auditing done and they can look at everything and probably straighten out your accounting for you if it's a mess. But I'm not
Right.
sure where that wouldn't be handled by a good accountant.
It's
Um,
interesting because my understanding is that Ontario has an audit requirement every year. Every community needs to have an audit completed, and those go out, those audited statements go out as part of the next AGM package.
ah,
And in British Columbia, there is no formal audit requirements for strata corporations. So they have to still have their accounts prepared, they have to file, but they do not have to get an audit. At least that's my working knowledge of it, which is
oh,
interesting.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never see with in a lot of cases I've been with professionally managed stratas, and I would only just get to review the accounting that they put together. And to me, it's a Bearland strata, 75 units. There was a lot of money being exchanged for a lot of different reasons, and they just keep track of that stuff. It's like a full-time position at a property management company. They usually have a team that's just doing accounting. And in some cases, I wouldn't even doubt they got a larger accounting, especially if they're dealing with commercial properties, a larger accounting team than they actually have of strata managers themselves. Because commercial
Well,
wise, yeah, there's not as much demand on a strata manager, so to speak.
right.
You're dealing with professionals who own these strata lots or businesses. There's usually less of them in a development, say 6 to 10 instead of 60. And they're usually professionals who are know what they're dealing with as far as payments and everything else. So yeah, just making a point that there's a lot of accounting in strata management.
And I think that really speaks to how critical getting accounting right is for self-managed stratas because they don't have the benefit of a team. They are
No.
typically, one of the volunteer owners of the community, and they may or may not have a full accounting background, but they are taking on an important role, and they need software that will help them do that effectively. And
Yeah.
I know it's been a pain point for many small communities, and I'm intrigued that you're building something out to help.
Yeah, and we're trying to keep it real simple so that basically you have a budget which has details in it where all the money's being allocated, and you have, your spending. So basically you have your budget at the beginning of the year. These are, approved by the council, sorry, approved by the strata owners. And so you're responsible for that. So you just have to keep track of what's being spent every month.
Yeah,
So every expenditure should have a paper trail, or a digital trail. So that means if you've got an invoice or receipt or some other council approved documentation for spending, um, you got to keep track of that and document that stuff. You can implement spending limits and maybe have a dual process to reduce risk of unauthorized payments. So you got two signatures on a check instead of just one. I think that's a big thing you should really do is establish clear spending limits and have an approval process that requires two signatures on a check or any other payment.
right.
So yeah, paper documentation provides an audit trail in case you're doing your auditing and protects the council from any disputes. So what you don't want is you don't want unapproved, undocumented payments because that can erode the strata owner's trust.
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to turn off this.
And it is important, since you have gotten owner approval for your budget, to stick to that budget. And how do you handle what happens throughout the course of the year?
Okay, so a good budget when you're starting your budget planning, you got to factor in a few things. The big picture is routine operational costs, the cost of cleaning, your landscaping, utilities. You got to do a budget that factors in predictable annual increases from things like insurance premiums and just generally inflation in general. You have to think about your contingency reserve fund contributions based on what the depreciation reports says. So you want to have a good plan for your budget. So, and then realize budgets throughout the year are not static. They require ongoing attention. So regularly comparing your actual expenditures to the budgeted amounts on a monthly basis helps the council identify possible trends or potential shortfalls, like if you're spending too much too quickly, or what it might be just planning your spending monthly. Some contracts, for instance, will give you a yearly cost, and so you put that annual cost into monthly, same payment every month, that type of thing. So you want to compare your actual spending to the budget each month to identify variances, and then just adjust your spending plan early if expenses are going to exceed projections. And you can, a good budget will anticipate um, performance in both. If you're going to exceed your projections or you're going to have a surplus. So make your budget, look at it every month. That's what you got to do and track everything.
Absolutely. And we all know that there are variable costs as well, things that cannot always be predicted. Most buildings, especially if they're self-managed, are not going to have an all-inclusive contract for things like snow removal. If you have a year where the weather is colder and you get more, your costs may run ahead of your expectations, vice versa in years where there's warmer climates or less precipitation. So there will be some variance from what you expect in most cases, but making sure that you're on top of that is critical.
Yeah, even doesn't even matter how big your budget, your strata is. You have to do this on a monthly basis, because just trying to go back 3 or 4 months and say, "Well, I'll catch up with that stuff," it can create problems for you. So it's just do it on a monthly basis. That's the best practice.
Absolutely.
So transparency for financial reporting. So reporting, well, transparency is not just a best practice; it's actually a legal requirement. Section 36 of the Strata Property Act gives owners the right to review financial statements, budgets, and invoices. So it has to be available for them to review. So owners have a legal right to access financial information, again, under Section 36 of the Strata Property Act. So Strata should provide clear, easy to read summaries at AGMs and throughout the year, and try to avoid overly technical accounting terms. And I would even recommend, we had a property manager would use visual aids like pie charts and balance snapshots to communicate where the money's going, so people can easily understand what a pie chart looks like, and where the money's going, compared with like doing line items where it's just a whole bunch of numbers. So again, this comes down to building trust. Transparency builds trust, reduces conflict, and everybody knows where the money's going and being allocated, and it should be not confusing.
No, that makes sense. I think, we've all seen how um, clarity helps. We talk a lot about transparency and communication, and we have seen cases hit both the CRT here and other tribunals across Canada where owners are not feeling like they're getting access to the information that they deserve, especially with respect to financial reporting. So,
Mhm.
I think that you've really nailed it with this. It helps build trust. It makes everyone feel more confident about where their money is going every month as they support their community.
Yeah, and there's reference to the Strata Property Act. Everybody who owns a strata property should have a copy of the act, read through it. It's not complicated, lots of information in there, but it tells you what you have a right to and what you don't. And basically, that's the document that's kind of the backbone of governing stratas in BC. And I'll reference one of those here, Section 35. Um, it's a requirement to keep documentation. So, as required in Section 35 of the Strata Property Act, you got to keep your invoices, receipts, contracts, statements, um, keep them all organized for at least 6 years. You can use cloud storage or digital filing for easy retrieval. We have all that available at StrataPress. So it also, having documentation and keeping it organized when it comes to producing Form Bs and having access to financial information to answer questions or prepare for an audit. You don't want to be disorganized. If you're disorganized, it'll cause delays, errors, and probably result in some unnecessary accounting costs. And just for reference, I put, because I mentioned the Section 35, there's a link there, stratapress.com, strata-documents-retention-guide. If you go there, you'll see a list of the documents your strata is required to keep and for how long. Some is indefinite, some has 2, 3, 6 year limits, things like that. So I thought that might
Perfect.
be
So
handy
that's
to
a
have.
BC based guide. We'll put a link to that in the materials for this after the
Okay,
webinar. Thanks, Sean.
great. Working the homes, this is great because working with qualified bookkeepers, that's what I do. and I've always done it. That's why I'm not an accountant. And so there is strata accounting requires unique legal and operational requirements. Um, these are things that general accounting firms may not fully understand. So if you're going to get professional management, you want to work with somebody who's got experience with the Strata Property Act and BC's compliance framework. So a qualified strata accountant can like interpret and apply legislation correctly. They can prepare compliant financial statements, identify financial risks for your strata before they escalate, and they can provide tax related advice on tax related implications for investment income if your strata has something like that. In which, kind of on a side note, if you do have a contingency reserve fund for a large strata, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's why I mentioned investment income, because there is opportunity to put those into some type of vehicle that holds the money and could actually even pay interest on it. You don't want to be buying stocks or gambling with that money, but
No,
uh,
there actually are requirements around what is acceptable, or they're not.
exactly. So just mentioning that for self-managed stratas. So choose a professional who understands the Strata Property Act and typical strata operations, and they can provide advice on compliance, tax reporting, and best practices. So
Excellent.
yeah, and nobody wants to be audited. So working with a professional usually avoids those type of things. Internal controls. Yeah. So internal controls are the strata's first line of defense against fraud or mismanagement. This comes down what I mentioned before: dual signatures on checks, possibly rotating duties amongst council members. Um, so other people are involved and it's not being in the hands of one person for years and years and years. Use secure accounting software with role-based permissions, and those all contribute to security. So yeah, just a review: dual signatures, rotate financial reviews as far as duties go, from different council members, and then um, just be in the know of what's going on with your strata.
Financial institutions are very good at now offering electronic alternatives so that you've got that dual authorization for approval of expenses, and that is very helpful for Strata, and it
Yeah,
does ensure that you've got better controls.
I think there's dual signatures required on Form Bs from a self-managed strata. I'm not sure if dual signatures are required on payments or checks or any type of payment methods for self-managed stratas, but it probably
It's good
should be.
practice.
It's good practice. Yeah.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
got to keep on top of that. Discourages fraud and increases confidence in the ownership, in the financial stewardship, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, book a demo.
Good.
That's all we got. That's all about accounting. That's just 10 things that you could know about accounting. I did post a blog on StrataPress. Go to stratapress.com insights, and there is I wrote an article about this, outlining all those points we just went over in a little more detail.
Excellent. Thanks, Sean. I did see that article posted. I think it's great.
Good.
I also think that the accounting software that you guys are developing will help a lot of these communities that are too small to have professional property management. They can't benefit from that team of accountants that is often working to ensure that they're compliant and that their statements and books and records are always current.
Yeah.
So I think that that's obviously a good alternative. I'm going to flash the link up again so someone can get onto the StrataPress site, look up that article, or to book a demo. I'm looking forward to seeing some developments.
Yeah.
When do you think this might be something that members of the public will see in terms of StrataPress's?
Probably first quarter of the new year, 2026. And we're having some strata owners beta tester right now, people with accounting experience who are working with self-managed stratas, or they're the treasurer of their own strata. They're giving us feedback, and we're really trying to keep this simple. You kind of see it more of a bookkeeping software. It keeps track of your expenses, manages your budget, and then we'll look at how we can tie this in with doing your tax return, and also providing access to professional accountants who can review the information maybe on an annual basis, quarterly, or biannually as well.
Fantastic.
So it'll be less expensive than having a full-time accountant on your especially if it's a smaller strata, it kind of
Yeah.
might be hard for them to justify doing the work and for you to pay for it. I mean, if it's a small strata, but if you're getting in like 30 or more units, then you should be looking at professional accounting assistance at the very least, in my opinion.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Good to
All
know.
right.
Well, thanks, Sean. Appreciate
No
it.
problem.
We'll be back next month with another topic of strata education. And until then, everyone, grab the link there on your screen.
Thanks a lot. We'll see you next month.